He needs to be held accountable for all the funds that might have been lost under his watch and whatnot. But the reason they're removing him is not because of that. They're removing him because they've realized today the Star newspaper has the numbers on the front page, and you can see the battleground and whatever. So of course, Star newspaper is not always right, but you can see what is going on there. They're removing him because the deputy governor of Nyamira happens to be UDA. Let me say, happens to be an agent of this rogue government. And so they've realized that they don't, Kisii is really, even the 10% they thought they would have, they're not going to get it. So they've realized they must impeach. This Nyaribo guy has refused to play ball with government. Unlike our Kisii county governor, who has outrightly gone to join the government, and that is where me and him parted ways. But the Nyamira governor said, no, he cannot. He's not going to be part of this rogue regime. So they're impeaching him because they need to put in their person. It's all about private businesses, theft. Even the change, you've seen, we're looking for, we need to get a new currency, a 5,000 Kenya shilling note. That's because these State House boys, they've been carrying money. It's becoming impossible to carry money. Those kilos are too many now. They want to compress it to a 5,000 shilling so that they can reduce the kilos. They are stealing money left, right, and center. It has to be stolen in cash to be taken to wherever it's taken. It's proving to be a logistical nightmare to carry these thousands of Kenya shillings around. So now they want to get a 5,000 Kenya shilling note so that they can steal properly ahead of the 2027 election. There's nothing you see in this newspaper is about what you see. It boils down to the money that is being stolen by, let me call this gang. It's a gang.
But you know what worries me?
It is a gang that is led by the head of state.
What worries me, though, is that the people who did sit down again, of course, with another professional, James Bays, and he said that 430,000 jobs have been created for Kenyans within the country, outside the country. But then if we do a link, as we're often taught to do, between that and what we see, essentially what we are saying is that out of that number, that there are very many a Kenyan who have gone, and for some reason Saudi Arabia keeps showing up on the radar here, that they're getting into these jobs. On paper it looks like one thing, but in reality it is something else. There are women who are being sexually abused.
First of all,
there are inhumane treatment that's happening. Some of them come back in a box.
Your statement needs to be corrected, because I need to tell you that the president, William Ruto, he's a liar. Take it from me. Take it from me. Sometimes I listen now to some of the things that he says. I'm like, but you're lying. The other day he said that his cabinet secretary and his PSs and his team at the ICT ministry went ahead and rushed to get us into some form of partnership to get into the data center industry. And, they didn't do their proper research to find out that, we don't have capacity in terms of power and downtime. And I was like, but you are lying. You are a liar. I have had a one-on-one conversation with you when I was just sworn in, and I was trying to get to be a chair of the ICT committee, and I told you that, in fact, specifically, that we need to bring the data center industry to Kenya. And then I said, but we need to work on two things. We don't have capacity on electricity, and we need to understand the whole economics of substations. So when I heard him say that, I'm like, but you are lying. You're feigning ignorance. And that is such a lie. So all these things that he said, in fact, nowadays I look and I'm like, you are a liar.
But Gloria,
you are lying. You are lying about the jobs. You are lying. By the way, the other day he went to Saudi Arabia and he carried the Senate Labour Committee to legitimize his actions. So the Senate Labour Committee, my colleagues, I was seeing them there taking selfies and posting photos on, and I know how much it costs to take a committee to a place. They use over 10 million for sure. And then they came back and said that they've signed a good agreement and Kenyans are going to be protected, they're going to be paid well. I'm like, but you guys are lying. You guys are actually lying. And was that there are so many people who are being asked for illegal fees. They are being conned out of a lot of money, and they're actually not going for these jobs. Thousands and thousands of Kenyans who paid 15,000, some who paid 45,000, never ended up anywhere. And then there are few who ended up where they went and later discovered that if they were signing up for a job as a driver or a caregiver or whatever, they didn't end up in those jobs. In fact, they ended up in very weird jobs. And so when I was reading the New York Times and the slave trade and everything, I was like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God.
This is where you were sending people, Gloria.
This is why I was so violently removed and shut down, and all the policemen taking me out down at the Senate premises. Today as I was coming in, the nominated Senator Tabitha walked in, and I'm like, man, I'm grown, because these are some of the people who also were part of, they were being sent to make sure that I was hounded and removed, and they pushed the processes within Parliament till today. So I was looking at her and I said, and I was like, I'm at peace, because I can sleep at night knowing that I didn't send Kenyans to be killed. I didn't con Kenyans.
Right.
I'm not fraternizing with the enemy, and I am not part of this scam of a government.
But you know what you're saying? The New York Times, Abdi Latif Abdi wrote a story about... of course, Kenyan workers who go abroad, in this case, the Gulf, and specifically Saudi Arabia, who then find themselves in a bit of a pickle. That they're mistreated, they're not paid right, and they're not paid on time. And even with the abuse, and this is not a new story. This is not a new story. This has been happening for the longest time. We've been raising it and bringing it up and saying there have to be better mechanisms through which people who leave Kenya to go to the Gulf to work then will operate within, whether it is the metrics for payment, whether it is how they're treated. There should be one standard agreement about how this is done. So, I mean, that notwithstanding, the thing that would have caused an issue is that, the agencies that normally send these people to other countries, you go, you fill an application, you get it done, you go. That some of these agencies are now being linked in terms of ownership to the president and his daughter. And the people who travel are linked directly to these agencies. So some start to wonder why. And why we would have called you to have this conversation with us, to maybe explain to us, is that you are right in the center of the storm around jobs for Kenyans in other countries, and you came under some fire because of demanding for the right thing to be done. How is it possible that jobs being created for Kenyans also being mistreated, sometimes Kenyans showing up in a box under regulation that's required for certain things to happen, and then we hear that some of these agencies belong to the president? I mean, it just seems like conflict of interest hitting us in the face.
So now let me shock you.
Okay, here we go.
Let me shock you. First off, Abdi from New York Times, I got a phone call from Abdi of New York Times early May. And he tried to have a sit down with me early May, eventually mid-May, somewhere around that time.
This year?
Yeah, this year. I told him, I'm busy. I have so many things happening between committee meetings and whatever. So I told him, why don't you come to Parliament? And we can have lunch at the Parliament dining hall. And then I can, talk to you about whatever it is that you want to hear from me, which was about the labor export, because by that time there was a lot of news. We had started the Senate inquiry that I had pushed for at the Labor Committee, the Senate Labor Committee. So Abdi came. We were sitting by the garden at the Parliament, spot there at the garden, and I picked my lunch, and there were two other senators who joined me much later, and we started talking. It was a very laid-back conversation. He was literally just asking me, so what's going on? We've been following, the whistleblowing that you've done on these fake diaspora jobs and what's really happening, and, the scam that it is. And it was a casual conversation. And then the treasurer for UDA, Japheth Nyakundi, walks by the table, and then he says, former nominated senator. So by this time, I've not been removed.
Not yet, yeah.
We've not done anything. I'm sitting. And by banter, I tell him, yes, good afternoon, one term member of Parliament. And then he says, this is your last lunch in this garden. You're going home. We are going to remove you.
Okay.
Yeah, continue doing those things. Those things that you're doing.
Even this lunch that you're having here.
So, me, in hindsight now, when I reflect, is when I'm like, oh,
And this is in presence of Abdi?
At that time, yeah, in presence of Abdi. In fact, Abdi then looked at me like,
what have I got myself into here? Yeah.
And then he said, are they serious? They're going to remove you? I said, I don't know. But with these people, you can never tell.
Right.
But he said it. So he knew who I was talking to. And he knew that I was actually serious about this inquiry because I knew that a lot of things were happening and I hadn't even scratched the surface of it. So later I came to find out. So obviously when the article came out, I called Abdi and I was like, what? And he said, yeah, Gloria, I was sitting with you when this member of parliament came and said, this is your last lunch in parliament. So,
was it actually your last lunch?
Yeah.
Okay.
Obviously, we laughed about it and everything. And you know why I was laughing? And when the story came out, and I was like, aha. So even the fact that they allowed for the Senate inquiry to just happen to the extent that I would give all the evidence that I had, they just wanted to know how much information I had. After that, it was shut down. We had the broad-based government come into play. The vice chair of the committee was changed, and Senator Crystal Asige was put there. And she was given instructions to kill it, and they killed it. So what they did eventually is that they said, if you've been conned and if you've had interactions with any of these fake agencies, why don't you go to the NHIF building or some building somewhere in town and, register yourself. And that was the end of the story. And instructions were given, very strict instructions were given to the chair of the committee and to the vice chair of the committee. You will later see that actually the chair and the vice chair, the chair of the committee is, I forget his name. The vice chair is Crystal Asige. You later see them hanging around with Alfred Mutua. The story dies.
Wow.